Hello, this is Ron Collier, video blog number 1. We talk about a technology, cell phones. So we'll start with where did the technology come from? It's from research. Dr. Martin Cooper is known worldwide as the inventor of the modern day cell phone. He not only created the device, but was actually the first individual to use a cell phone back in 1973. Now, it's stated the concept of the cell phone has been around since 1947, so it took about 26 years to make that concept a reality. To do so, Dr. Cooper worked with an engineer, John Mitchell, both at Motorola, and they developed the cell phone from another technology Motorola had at the time of a police radio. And the idea was to give people the ability to call whenever and wherever. Just to contrast, part of the motivation for the company themselves was Motorola's working on the cell phone. AT&T, at the time, a bit different from the AT&T we know today, but they were working on what we call the car phone. Motorola did win the race when Dr. Cooper made a cell phone call on April 3rd, 1973. And interesting enough, his first phone call was actually to the AT&T chief engineer, Mr. Joel Engel. Now, from this time to when they went on sale, there was said about 10 years. A lot of that was to lower the cost for the users at that time of the cell phone, which, primarily were business users and wealthy, because even the lowering the cost from 73 to say 81 was still too much for the normal end user, where, they could use a payphone or a home phone, things of that nature. So the infrastructure, when I talk about cell phones, the social construct of them, and the user's impact on the cell phone, I also want to mention the cell phone is a user of a cell phone cellular network. So its use of that network also caused it to change. So really briefly on that, the infrastructure to allow cell phone to work at that time was very small, in first generation network, or 1G. So needing that to grow, say around to, it took another 10 years, not a widely adopted technology in the 80s. You may have seen someone with a cell phone, but it was, again, more of an elite device, not widely distributed. So around 1981 came the 2G network. This added some key functions, digital encryption of the calls, and more efficient network usage. So it had allowed companies to deploy wider networks to cover more areas and, of course, more penetration, more subscribers, as well as SMS texting at that time. So again, this network change was spurred as well by the need to make the cell phone better, but also by the users at that time. So around 2001, we get the 3G networks, which is what we see today. They allow more bandwidth, as well as, in building up these networks, they've matured, and, that lowers the cost once you've, spent a lot of money on building a network. Some of the payment has already been made. However, it allows you to lower the price, which then brought in more business users, as well as some in-family use, some consumer usage, I guess is the best way to put it. But outside of just, having business accounts, people were able to afford technology. And then finally, now today, we're seeing the growth of 4G, 5G networks that, again, have added more bandwidth, really high speed internet access, so to say, is where the cell phone has gone. So away from analog connectivity to digital, which is more, from a company standpoint, cheaper. It allows for them to provide the service and, meet their bottom line, as well as giving people a good price point. So what does this technology mean to different social groups, for instance, in the primary groups, business and the consumer? So early business users, talking about the change of the cell phone, originally ability to call people, and then came the ability to use additional applications such as email and the text messaging. And then once it was given to, family users, mom, dad, and the kids, the growth of the networks in the company was really based upon who could provide more applications even above the email and texting. So kind of looking at the picture biker pincher model of, what kind of makes an artifact in the social construction. And the key thing I brought from that was solution to a problem. So, at that time, the problem was, it wasn't very convenient to call back to the home office. So it brought that, as well as for, a solution that probably they didn't think they would bring was a competitive advantage in that business users could call back and, negotiate deals and things like that. As well as today, cell phones give us the ability from a family to, keep in touch, find out where people are, things like that. And, of course, the cell phone is morphed into what we call the smartphone today, which the behaviorally wise, is used more than PCs, according to Nielsen studies. And realistically, the mobile phone has really become a part of our everyday life. And, we're talking about a technology that truly really didn't exist 30 years ago in the manner it is. It was born 40 years ago. However, due to the social requirements for it, it's grown into what we know today. And, that is part of how it's affected our social relationships. So behaviorally, cell phone, we talked about, the first thing they wanted to do was make a phone call. Today, most of communications is done over text messages, which, I think is part of another growth of another technology, email, where people got used to communicating that way. So, very rarely a message or is actually snail mail or regular mail sent, which again has other impacts on the postal system and things like that. And the growth of social networking, where, with 3G and 4G networks, smartphones are able to actually get involved with social networking. People don't need to call a business anymore. They can interact with them via websites, as well as, more importantly, I think with Web 2.0, things you can review companies. I'm an avid user of TripAdvisor, companies like that, have now allowed more power to an end user. And it's changed the shape and the customer service that we receive. Finally, one conflict that this has caused, and looking at a study by USA Today last year, cell phone use has caused 1 in 4 car accidents now. So while this is a convenient technology, it has, caused issues with safety, prompting legal action to be taken, and states changing their laws in regards to like handheld cell phone use, and prompting technologies like Bluetooth. And again, another change where the cell phone itself, the user's usage of it has changed how vehicles are made today. So more integration of Bluetooth in the vehicles so that you can have hands-free communications due to the laws that were passed, and New York being the first state apparently to pass this law. So I think I've gone over my time, but hopefully this has been interesting. Video blog number 1 finished.